back out at Standard Auto Wreckers today, picking away at this 88 S15. I've pulled quite a few parts off this truck already, but today I got the leaf springs out of it. This is a truck that I cut the sections of frame rail out of too. And the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull the drums, and I want to check the backing plates. If these ones are good, we'll take them. If not, we're going to go down the hill here and there's a Courtice. So one of the things that's not super well known is that the brakes on the front of and the rear Camaros are also the same as the S10s, and so are the brakes that you'd find on a Courtice and most other GMs. So what we have here is an 86 Courtice, and if you look at it closely here, these brakes and even those lower control arms and upper control arms, and out back here, these drums and everything, they look really familiar, eh? And that's because they're exactly the same as a first generation S10. So we're going to see if we can get the rear backing plates out of it and the front dust shields. Okay, and here's what we ended up getting. Got a set of leaf springs from the little S15. And the Courtice was kind enough to give me its brake backing plates and the front dust shields. Okay, so we're out here in the wreckers again today, and what we're looking at here is an S10 Extreme. So these were kind of cool little trucks. And this one is, what year is this truck? Looks like it's probably a 2000. Yep. So this truck's a 2000. And what makes these trucks kind of interesting is, you'll see the big 16-inch tires. But more interestingly is, if we go around to the glove box, these trucks have, and you could order the options separately on a regular S10, but let's find our glove box. So if we go down here to our RPO codes, you'll see right there ZQ8. Now what the ZQ8 package entails, you'll notice that there is a rear sway bar on this truck. You'll notice that there is an extra brace right here. From the factory, you'll see that it only has 3 leaves rather than 4 like a regular S10. In the front, it has a little bit lower set of springs in it, and it has a big thick sway bar up front. And in addition to that, it also has a quicker ratio power steering box. So they're a treasure trove of parts if you have an S10 that you're doing yourself and you want to upgrade the steering and suspension in it. So here's a good example. This is obviously a 2-wheel drive V6 extended cab S10, and it is a what year? It is a 2001. So we go in here to the Z codes. See, it's got Z85. So that's actually the increased capacity suspension package. If we go back here, you'll see, well, you won't see very good on this side because of the snow, but it'll have 4 leaves. And then up front here, see how small that sway bar is? So I'll show you the other one off the other truck here in a minute. So this truck isn't much to look at. It doesn't look like it's anything special, right? But if we come down here and look at our RPO codes again, what you'll see is this truck's got the ZQ8 package as well. So Someone's already pulled the rear end out of this truck, but up front, you'll see it's still got the big thick front sway bar if somebody wanted it. So that's why we always have a look at our RPO codes, because they tell us the truth. Alright, so we're working on some front suspension assembly here. So this side's all together and everything. And we're working on the right side right now. But I figured I'd show you kind of what we got into today. So shocks in, all the ball joints, tie rod, new coil isolators are already mounted up in the frame and everything, and that's this side all back together now. The only thing I didn't show was the installation of the springs, and that's for a reason, because the way I do it is not the way I would recommend you doing it, and I don't want anybody to get hurt. If I'm stupid and I hurt myself doing it that way, then so be it, but I'm not going to be responsible for somebody else getting hurt. But I'll show you the rest. Okay, so as mentioned, I've now got the coil back in its position, and we're going to leave the control arm bolts back here where they go through the frame as they are until we get the weight of the engine and everything back in here. So for now, what we can do though is torque the lower ball joint, the upper ball joint, and then put the tie rod on the spindle here and install our shock up through the bottom. Alright, so with the right equipment here, I wrote down all the torques and everything out of the service manual. And we'll start with our lower, which is a 15/16. And it is set to 90 foot-pounds. So I'll take our torque wrench here, wind it over to 90, and we can go ahead and torque it. Now, there's a lot of guys that would just run these down with an impact gun and call it even, but okay. Now we're going to make sure that our hole is lined up to put a cotter pin through, and it is. Bonus. Now when it comes to cotter pins, everybody's got a different way of doing them. So I'll show you how I do them. How you do them is up to you. What I usually do is cut the bottom one off, take the top, pull it back and over, take my small ball peen hammer, I'll tap it through to make sure the cotter pin's all the way in, I'll pull it down, trim the end of the top of it off, take my ball peen hammer again, and I take, knock that flat, come back here, snip this off so it's a little shorter, and then take my small hammer and I bend it down. That's how I do a cotter pin. Everybody does it different. Okay, our upper is 65, so I'll spin this back to 65 here. And it's 17 millimeter. And usually that's what happens, is it rotates around. And again, we'll just make sure that it lines up with one of the holes here, so we can put a cotter pin through it. And it doesn't, which means what we're going to do is take our ratchet and we'll rotate it back just a hair. There we go. So we'll do the same thing. I'll just take and bend it across here and tap it up. And I'll come around this side and trim this end up. Okay. Now we can put our tie rod end on here. I'll move this crap out of the way. Alright. Obviously all this stuff's going to need adjusted. Alright. Now the tie rod to the knuckle here, as the manual refers to it, is going to be another 17, but it's only 35 foot-pounds. So we'll adjust our torque wrench here. I think it's time to get this torque wrench head rebuilt. Okay, and it lines up. Bonus. Get another cotter pin. Alright, let's take our cotter pin, put it through. Okay, that is our front end mostly assembled. The next thing we have to do is put our shock on. Alright, so what I usually do is with these GM shocks, first thing we do is we take our shock and we're going to go ahead and insert it through our lower control arm and up here like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the top bolt on loose for now, and that'll hold the shock up so we can work underneath. We'll come back and we'll tighten the top of it here in a minute. Okay, hopefully you can see what's going on here. So here's our shock. Now there's two J nuts that are inside the frame rail here. So what we're going to do is, well, not the frame rail, the control arm I should say. We're going to kind of hold the shock up and get one of the bolts started. Alright, take our other one, get it started hopefully here too. Okay, we can just take our ratchet and we'll just tighten them up. I'll come back and torque them after the weight of the truck is on it. Okay, that's that one. Okay, and like I say, we'll come back and torque those later. So tightening up the top half is pretty straightforward. I usually use a ratchet wrench, and then I've actually got one of the shock sockets. So that slips over there and that holds the top stud. So what I usually do is I go as far as I can before the stud turns. Okay, so the stud just turned. Come back and put our socket on here now and hold it. And we'll go just a turn or two more. There we go. That is, I usually just turn it so it's vertical here. Alrighty, so we've pretty well got the suspension and everything all wrapped up here in the front of the truck, as well as all the steering linkage and everything's back on it and fresh. So the next thing I'll do is I'll clean up the dust shields that we got from the Cutlass. Then they can go on the spindles, and then after that we can start assembling brakes on the truck. In the back, I got the leaves are laying here on the floor, so we'll press the old bushings out of those today, and then we'll disassemble the leaves so that they can get all sanded and painted, and then we can reassemble them and put new bushings in those, and then we can hang the leaves back in the back of the truck.